So a histogram is in fact going to be the type of graph we talk about today. We're going to talk about how to make one, what we can read from it. So we're going to start with what a histogram is. We're going to open it up. Things that a histogram is. I'm going to zoom in, make this a little bit bigger. All right, so a histogram shows the frequency. Do we know what that word means? How often it happens? Yes. For I teach math. I don't spell. Frequency of data. Okay. It also is used for continuous data, meaning there's not going to be any gaps. For the most part. Has evenly spaced ranges. That's going to be called an interval. We're going to talk about those today. That's what Ethan J. was talking about, groups of numbers is an interval. It is not good for categorical. What do we use for categorical data? Do you remember? A bar graph or a dot plot? Good. Okay, so those are the things that we use a histogram for. The next bullet says, how is a histogram different from a bar graph? And Luke said earlier, the bars touch, right? On a bar graph, there's spaces. On a histogram, the bars are going to touch. Okay, and we have equal intervals, not categories. Right? We're intervals. These are going to be numbers, right? So our data is going to be numbers. So if I was doing, say, the height of the people in this room, we could do intervals. We could say, 4.5 feet to 4 3/4 feet, 4 3/4 to 5, 5 1/4, and so on. All right, so here is how we make a histogram. We're going to decide, we're going to have to analyze our data. And we're going to need to decide on the width. So this isn't really an average, but it's kind of an average with the range, right? So if we're deciding on our width, we need to definitely be looking at our range and how we can be breaking that up. All right, we're also going to have to create something called a frequency table. We're going to do that today. In a frequency table, you've probably done this before, you just called it a tally chart, right? Same thing. We're going to create a tally chart. We're going to draw and label. This is an and symbol. The x-axis with the intervals. The intervals are always on the x-axis, so we're going to have those numbers. And then we're going to draw and label the y-axis with number values, right? So we know how tall each one is. And then we're going to draw the bars. Okay. So shall we try this? Let's see. It's not as hard as it sounds. So, I know, scores out, well, it says out of 30. So that means 30 is 100. So at first when you look at that, you're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible, right? But it's out of 30, so we're okay. So let's look and see step one, we need to decide our width or our range, right? So we're looking for our smallest number, 18, Angela said, and our highest number is 30. So our range, 30 minus 18, we're going to have to do a little borrowing, is 12. So we need to kind of decide how many bars we want to have. Do we want to have 4 bars? Do we want to have 5 bars? Do we want to have 3 bars? What do we want to count? How many numbers do we want in our interval? Well, you want to have 5 bars? Okay. So if we're going to have 5 bars, we also need to remember when we do intervals, we need to figure out how many numbers are going to be in each one. So if we're going to do 5 intervals, 5 goes into 12, 2, so we probably need 3 numbers in each one. Okay. So what do you want to start with? You want to start with, like, I know it says 18. Do you want to start with 16? Because that's about half. 15. So we want to count by, shall we count by 3s? And we want to start with what number? You want to start with 15? Okay, I think if we start with 15, because you have to remember we have 15, 16, 17, then we're not actually going to have anything in that interval. Right? Because our lowest number is 18. So let's, shall we start with 18? You want to do that? Yeah. So if we're going to make our frequency table, right, or a tally table, we're going to have to put our interval here and then how many we have. So we want to start with 18. So we'll have 18, 19, 20. So 20, and then we would go 21, 22, 23. You see how we have 3 in each? What part are you confused about? Okay, so 18 is our lowest, yes? If we're going to put 3 pieces, we're going to have 3 numbers in our interval, right? So we have 18, 19, 20. So this first interval is going to be all of the test scores from 18 to 20, right? But because we already used 20 up here, our next interval starts with 21. And we wanted to have 3 numbers in each interval, right? So 21, 22, 23, right? So what's the next one going to be? 24, 25, 26. Good. I know it's a little weird because you're like, but 26 minus 24 is only 2, right? But really, we're including that number. So what's this next one going to be? 27 to 30 to 29. And then we can do 30 to 32. Okay, so are we okay with intervals? Yeah, I did too. That happens, right? So now we make our tally chart. So how many do we have that fall in this interval? Well, I have an 18. I have a 19. We don't have a 20. Okay, 21 to 23. So there's a 21. Here's a 23. Is that all? Okay. 24 to 26. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh my. Is that right? And then 27 to 29. So I see 1, 2. And 30 to 32. How many 30s did we have? Nope, that says out of, oh, you're right, 3. I'm sorry. I had circled it. 1, 2, 3. This is from the sentence, this 30. I know, I almost did that too. Okay, so do we feel okay about our tally chart? All right, so down here we have our x-axis. Our x is always our horizontal axis, and we're going to have our intervals. Damn, I blinked out there for a minute, right? So this is x and this is y. Now, this is always what? What number is this always? Right here, 0, 0. So do you remember when we were doing graphs and we talked about graph breaks? Because we're not starting at 0, we're going to start at 18. So we're going to just do a little graph break here. So we know that we're not like skipping numbers. And then we can have, this will be 16 to 18, right? We're just labeling our intervals, 21 to 23, 24 to 26, 27 to 29, 30 to 32. Do you see how our intervals here match our intervals here? And then we can, I'm just going to kind of count. The highest we need to go is 5, kind of equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can even do some little lines across if that helps you kind of see it. Usually they'll give you a grid like this, so you don't have to draw it all yourself. Right? So how tall is our 16, or not 16 to 18? No one caught me there. Sorry, that should be 18 to 20. I'm not sure. It's a little different on my other key over here, but that's okay. I wanted to use the ones you wanted. So 18 to 20, how many did we have? 2. So we're going to go up. Now when we draw our next one, 21 to 23, it also has 2, but what do we have to make sure we do? They have to what? They have to touch, right? A bar graph would have a space here. 24 to 26. How tall is this one? This one's going to go up to 5. And notice that the width is pretty much the same. Right? We had 5 here. See my line going through. And then we had 2. And then we had 3. Okay? And the nice thing about a histogram is we can figure out how many pieces of data there are total. So we could technically do a range, but you have to be a little bit careful because like we didn't have a 32 piece of data, so range is a little tricky. But you can figure out how many pieces of data there are. You can't figure out how many of each one there is because they're just bars. Okay? Shall we try another? No, you're not going to be able to find a median here. Okay? Now, let's go to this page. Let's practice reading a histogram. Sometimes it's going to ask you to choose the correct drawing. Sometimes it's going to ask you to draw one. Sometimes it's going to ask you to interpret. So let's see if we can read a histogram, and then we can go back to maybe drawing one. So this one, it says histograms are used to display information where the data is shown in interval groups called intervals. The histogram shows the test scores of 30 students recorded in the table. Okay, so these test scores make more sense, yes? And look what they've done. They've already taken all of this and put it here. So from 51 to 60, that's actually 10 spaces, right? Because you got 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70. You see that? So I know in your head you're like, no, it's 9. But really remember we're including this 51. So these are all spaces of 10. We can see that we had 2 that were not successful there. We had 4 still not successful, 10, 8, and 6. And when you answer questions on this, please make sure, it's kind of like when you answer questions about a bar graph, okay? So just read it real carefully. The graph peaks at the 71 to 80 interval. More students scored in this range. That's a true observation, yes? Only 2 students scored between 50 and 60. That's true. Is this symmetric? Is it even approximately symmetric? No, this is false. All right. Can we now answer some questions? How many students scored in the 91 to 100 interval? 6. And that's the beauty of just like a bar graph or a dot plot. We always write those numbers in there. What about 61 to 70? 4. Ooh. Notice this word. Percent. How many of them, what percent scored 91 to 100? Ooh. There's 30, it tells us up here. So how many out of 30? 6 out of 30. We can simplify that. We can divide by 3, right? So 2 out of 10, which is in fact that 20%. Or you could say part over whole equals percent over 100, cross multiply, divide. All right, how do you feel about that? Okay, do you want to try one? Okay, maybe. I want you to turn it. I want you to try number 2, and then I'm going to give you the answers. All right, so here are the answers you should have come up with. 7 students are between 6 and 8. It is skewed left because remember it's the direction of the tail. 9 to 11 is the peak. 20 students total because you added them all up. 25%. How'd you do there? Okay, so now let's practice some more doing the whole thing. So we have Marla asked her classmates to keep track of how many minutes they spent studying for their test. Well, hopefully the longer they studied, the better they did, right? So we look at what we've got to do. We got to make a frequency table, right? Determine the interval we want to use. Remember, intervals don't overlap, right? We're not going to say 10 to 20 and 20 to 30. Where one interval ends, the next begins. Okay, so let's look here. What's our lowest number? 10. What's our highest number? 65. Oh my, okay. We need, so that's a space of 55, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we could say 55 divided by 6. Well, I know that 6 times 9 is 54. We can maybe try that. Because it's a range. Good question. It's the range. So maybe we go from 10. Do we want to go 9 or do we want to go 10? We want to go 9 and hope that we have enough. So 10, so we have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then, so what's my next one going to be? 19. Is it 19 plus 9? Because look, we have 10 plus 9, so it'd be actually plus 8 is right. 27, 28 plus 8 is 36. 37 plus 8, 45. 46 and 8 is 54. Oh, we did pretty good there. We could have made it even smaller. But, and then we've got our 55 and 8 is, oh, did we run out? 60. Oh, no. So we needed to go up one more. So we got to go 10. This is why we do math and pencil, right? Okay, so now we know we need to go up one. That's fine. So 10 plus, so we got to go to 19 and then 20 to 29. That's actually easier, isn't it? Oh, I'm sorry. You should have spoken up. 40 to 49. 50. Oh, there's lots of ways to do it. That's the beauty of statistics. There's lots of ways. All right. How's that? So I want you to take a few minutes with your table and put the intervals in. Make your tally chart. So we filled in our tally chart. Frequency is just how many tally marks we had. All right. We've already looked at number 2. We got to decide a scale. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We only need 8. So maybe we count by ones here. What else do we need to put over here? How do we know what these numbers represent? Yeah, so this is, now, since it's a histogram, we only ever really have numbers. But we do need to label the top here. What is this representing? So we know what are these numbers representing? Time spent what? Minutes studying or study minutes? That way we know that's what this is really representing. Down here we have number of students. And then we need to write in our intervals. Now we're not starting at 0, so we need to do a little bitty graph break there. And then we can do our intervals. We need to have 6 of them, so we got to try to kind of squish them in the best we can. 10 to 19, 20 to 29. We might have to add a little bit. Depends on how big you write. Some of y'all write pretty big. 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69. I'm just going to make mine a little bit bigger there because I ran out of space. And then the last thing is we draw our bars, right? So we had how many for 10 to 19? 4. Some of y'all are very particular. If you needed to get a ruler, you could do that. And then we had 8. Mrs. Ray's lines aren't super straight, but that's okay. We had 3. We had 3. Kind of slanted there, sorry. And then we had 2. And we had 2. So there's your histogram. How do you feel about that? All right. That's a good thing. So, everybody's caught up? All right, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're not going to worry about the back. I think you've probably got that. What I want you to do for me is the independent practice. There are 4. This is reading, right? Remember, shape is symmetrical or non-symmetrical. Then you're answering question. We talked about what peaks were. I'm going to give it to you. How many students are represented? Again, shape. Now, shape can be symmetrical, non-symmetrical, skewed left, skewed right. This is a percent. Be careful. And then on the back, you have 2. So I'm going to give you this paper, and we're going to see how much we can get done. I'm not going to give you homework tonight. You should be able to get at least the front done and start on the back. And then on Monday, we'll finish this, and we'll finish measures of spread from Thursday, and we'll go from there. All right, deal?